Well, it is 11 o'clock Pacific time. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jerome Moroso. Thanks again for joining us today for this week's edition of 11 at 11. I appreciate you being here, and congratulations again to you for taking some time out of your busy week to work on yourself and also on your workday. So this week I want to talk about the concept of addition through subtraction. So for most of us, one of the key drivers of stress in our workday is the reality that we are responsible for or have committed to too many things in our workday. And because of that, as soon as we enter the day, right, we are immediately flooded with this feeling of overwhelm and stress in anticipation of what's to come throughout the day, right? When I was a practicing lawyer several years ago, the moment I started to think about work, which was usually within a few minutes of waking up, the first thought that I would have about my day was all the things that I had to do, right? My day hadn't even started yet, and I'd already started to transport myself to being completely stressed and feeling overwhelmed by what I anticipated was going to happen that day. It's also one of the major reasons that we can't seem to get enough of the most important stuff that actually matters each day done, right? It feels like we're already behind before we start. So one of the ways that we can address this is to take a really close look at our workday and practice this concept of addition through subtraction. So the basic concept here is, what can I remove from my workday to make space for more of my most important work? Right? So this is a pretty simple concept, but in practice, it can actually be hard for us for a couple of reasons. And I want to give you two of the biggest reasons why. I think first, when we want to change something about our day, our initial instinct is generally to think, what can I add, right? Or what new thing can I introduce? Or what new thing can I do to make this better? And when I say adding, that can mean a whole host of things, right? It could be a new routine, it could be a new app or a new work tool. It could mean trying to add more boundaries to our day. It could mean adding more rules, right? Or trying to follow a certain script for how we want to move through our day. But the challenge that we encounter when we go straight to adding something is that we haven't done anything to clear out the old stuff, right? And I mean both our physical stuff, but also our mental stuff, right? We haven't done anything to address those old routines, those old processes, the old beliefs that we have, the old stuff that's always, blocking and congesting our workday in the first place. And sometimes we have years or even decades, right, of thinking and thought processes around how we do stuff that we have to uproot before we can add anything new, or all we're going to do is just add something, new and additional to that mix. I think the second reason is that we generally have an unwillingness or a resistance to letting things go, right? And that unwillingness exists both consciously and subconsciously. Consciously, we don't like to let some things go because we actually do like them, or they partially work, or they do serve some sort of purpose, or they're comfortable and they're familiar to us, or maybe it's something that we've always done, and even though it's not the best use of our time, and so we still keep it around because it's familiar to us. So subconsciously, right, we often don't like to let go of things because we have this emotional connection to them, right? Or, I think this one is actually the most important. They act as buffers, right, between us and things that we want to avoid, right? They're easy, they're simple, and so we drag them out forever and hold on to them because that means we don't have to do some of our most important work in a day, right? Or confront stress or anxiety around a project or having to deal with someone, right? Or our brain tricks us into being busy to avoid it. So, for example, I remember that on most days when I was practicing law, I would start the day responding to emails, right? I'd probably spend an hour or more responding to emails, some of which weren't even that important, and most of them actually weren't that important. And a lot of the time, I would take my good old time, writing some elaborate response to a simple request or something that shouldn't have taken that much thought. And at some point, I realized that that was inefficient, but somehow every day for years, I came into work and started by popping open my email. But eventually, I realized that the reason I kept doing that was because it allowed me to put off harder work that took more brain power, right? So in other words, I was subconsciously creating a buffer every morning between me and doing hard work that I didn't want to do because it helped me to put it off, even though I knew that it was not productive to start my morning that way, right? I resisted subtracting it from my day for that reason. So if our default reaction when we want to make a change is to add, and if we compound that with our conscious and subconscious desire to hold on to things, what do? I think the answer is focusing on subtraction, right? If we've identified a problem that we want to fix, or if there's a change that we want to make, we need to survey the lay of the land first and ask, what is it that I can subtract to create space for a new concept or a new idea that I want to introduce, right? So as a starting point, I want to give you a way to start to look at your workday with an eye towards subtraction. So there's this really simple exercise that you can do to start to wrap your head around things that you might be doing that are worthy of subtraction from your day so that you can spend more time on the work that matters the most, right? And the exercise is called the efficient effective matrix. And in order to use this, I want to start by kind of giving you a couple of definitions first. So for the purpose of this concept, when we say that you're doing something efficiently, we mean that you're doing that thing the right way, right? You're able to do it productively with minimal or wasted effort. So you've acquired a certain skill, you're able to complete a certain task competently, and you're essentially doing it well. When we say that you're doing work that is effective, that means that you're working on the right kind of work, right? So this is the work you do that has the most impact and it adds the most value, right? So if we put those two together, the most important and impactful way to spend our time during a day is to be doing the right things in the right way. And one way that we can measure whether we're doing the right things in the right way is to plot out our biggest tasks and projects and areas where we're spending the most time on what we would call an efficient effective matrix. So basically, here's how this works. If you take a look at this diagram, you'll see that there are 4 quadrants on this matrix. So quadrant 1 is work or tasks or projects we do that are neither efficient nor effective, right? Work that falls into this quadrant is not only work that you shouldn't be doing because it's the wrong kind of work, but it's also the kind of work that you're not really that good at either, right? So I want you to think about things in your day that not only are you not good at doing them, right? So you're not efficient, but it's also not the best way for you to spend your time. One example for me in my business is creating PowerPoint presentations. When I would give a major presentation, I used to spend hours trying to create the perfect slides or finding the perfect images to use. I wasted many days trying to get good at that, and it turns out that I'm not that great at it, and it's not the right work for me as the head of my company to be doing anyway, right? Anything that falls into this quadrant are things that you should be spending as little time as possible on each day. Quadrant 2 is work that you're efficient at, so you're good at doing it, but this work is really not the most impactful work that you could be doing, right? It's not the kind of work that leads to impactful results for you. So this kind of work is a total time trap because it's often the most enticing work because we're really good at it and they're low-hanging tasks, right? And because we're good at them, we think that it means that we're actually getting things done. But when we look closely, it turns out that even though we're good at it, it's not really helping us get our most important things done each day. Great example of this would be the email routine that I mentioned that I used to engage in, right? Responding to emails first might feel great because it's easy, but it isn't my most important work, and it takes away from me spending time on creating content for my PowerPoints. In quadrant 3, this is work that we should be doing because it's impactful, but there's room for improvement or for learning a better way to do it, right? So in other words, these are the areas in our day where we should be focusing our efforts to get better, like the way we manage our time or the ability to learn how to be better at sales or marketing or learning a new technique or a new skill, right? This is work we should be learning how to improve because at the end of the day, it helps us to further our most impactful work. So my last example, let's say I want to improve on my storytelling ability, right? So that I can make my presentations even better by learning the art of how to tell a story. That would be something that I may not be an expert at yet, but I want to spend some time learning how to do it because it will lead to me doing my work in a more impactful way. And then quadrant 4 is the efficient and effective quadrant. This is your work sweet spot, right? This is your money maker. The work that's in this quadrant is the kind where we should be focusing most of our time, right? This is not only the right work, but we're really good at it too. It's squarely within our job description, right? It's the reason the client hired us in the first place. They didn't hire us to respond to email or create a bunch of PowerPoints really beautifully. They hired us to do this work. So using my example, I should be spending my time creating and structuring a presentation, not messing with the slides or responding to emails for hours, because that's where I add the most value. So if we think about our work in these 4 quadrants, then the question we want to answer is, how can I create more space in my day for impactful work, which would be in quadrants 3 and 4, by subtracting inefficient things from my day, which would be quadrants 1 and 2. So I want to give you a 3-step process here that you can use to start thinking about addition through subtraction and using this matrix. So step 1 is just to take a couple minutes to write down the tasks that you're doing throughout the day and organize them into each of these quadrants. So probably the hardest and most important step, I think, because it forces you to really be real with yourself about those conscious and subconscious thoughts that I mentioned before that are getting in the way of you letting go of the things and routines and work that doesn't matter, right? But remember that you'll never clear enough space unless you get real with yourself about how you might be holding on to things that you do or the way that you do them for the wrong reasons. So after you've written things down, step 2 is just to figure out how you can move as many of the tasks as you can that are in quadrant 1 and 2 out of your workday, right? So how can you delegate, reduce, or eliminate from quadrants 1 and 2? Remember, it's not the right work for you to be spending your good energy on. It may not be in your job description, or you may not be good at it anyway. So why are we doing it, right? We need to figure out a way to take as much off of our plate as possible. So going back to my example, I did 2 things to change my old habits. First, I found a great designer that I could delegate PowerPoints to. His name's Dave. I hired Dave, and I subtracted a whole bunch of time out of my day. Second, I decided to start my day by working on my most important work first, so not email. I spend the first 2 to 3 hours of my day never responding to email, usually not before 10 a.m. I do it later in the day after I've created content first thing in the morning. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, that's great that you can do that, but literally there's nothing I can delegate or reduce or eliminate in my day. If you're having this thought, I invite you to set up a 30-minute appointment with me. And I bet that we can find a way to create 30 minutes of space in your day just by using this principle. I'm happy to do this for free for anyone who is on this call right now. Just schedule an appointment with me. We'll talk it through. I bet we can find 30 minutes of time in your day by going through this simple process. Last but not least, the third and final step is, now that you've created some space in your day, how can you move more of your work from quadrant 3 into quadrant 4? So in other words, what can you learn that will help you do more of your most impactful work and do it better, right? This is where classes, training, learning, growing comes into play, right? When you eliminate a bunch of the BS in your day that's preventing you from doing your most important work, then you have more time to do the work that gets you excited. You have time to work on yourself, on your business, on your career, really the money maker things that we should be spending our time on, right? Great example of this is, one great example is doing what you're already doing. You showed up today, right, to improve your workday, taking classes, things like that. So sum this up. If you want to create more space in your day for your most important work, we have to start by looking for what we can take out first. And that includes old beliefs or habits or routines about how you should be working. Okay, that's it for today. I'll take some time to answer any questions if there are any. All right, seeing no questions.
Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys. We'll go ahead and leave it there for today. Thanks again for joining. Would love to connect with you and get your help spreading the word about this series. If you share it with a friend, give us a shout out on social media. I'd really appreciate it. I've got our tags up on the screen. We can connect in all the places. Next episode is next Monday at the same time. I will see you then. Go have a great work day.
Thanks. You too, man.
Thanks, guys.
Are you gonna have?
All right.
Are you gonna have a class on removing kids from my workday so I can get more done?
Yeah.
I hope that's in the
series. we're gonna open up the Workday Mindset childcare facility soon, and that'll take care of that.
Great. Thanks a lot, bud. I'll see you next week.
Yep. All right. See you, man. Thanks, Adrian. See ya.
Yeah.